So, dear participants, it's my pleasure to share with you some notions and findings from a study that was part of this Nordic project on values education. And there was a comment referring to child perspective to the micro level, and I think that in my part I will really go to the grassroots level, what's going on in the daily life of preschools. Because my part is, and this study was, in the very core of this study was addressing situation in a preschool context. And I must mention that with the term preschool, we refer to early childhood settings where the children's ages range between 0 and 6, even 7 in Finland sometimes. It is not just 6-year-olds as we are used here in Finland to use the term preschool. So there is variation. So, and first of all, I would like to invite you to imagine addressing situation in a preschool context. I know that for many of you, this is daily life, so this is not a very difficult task for you. So, imagine addressing situation in a preschool setting. There is a long and narrow locker room, and children are just on their way outside. There are some children. There is Johan, who is 3 years, 1 month old, Edith, Bella, Nisse, Amelie, Silva, Mehmet, and Tina. And there is a teacher. There are some pictures hung on the wall, and they are hung there so that Johan can understand what is happening during the day. The teacher is talking with Johan and asking what the pictures are showing and where are they now in relation to this time schedule. But it appears that Johan doesn't understand. Edith is sitting on the floor and trying to get her outside clothes on. And Nisse is sitting also on the floor. He is already ready to go out. Johan sits down right beside Nisse, and Nisse begins to shout loudly. Amelie, who is near the adult, gets upset. "No, Johan," says the teacher decisively. "Now Amelia is upset. Look," urges the teacher. Johan leans forward and gives Amelia a hug. Straight after this, Amelia moves away, complaining. When the children are ready, they stand in a queue by the door. Johan is angry. He wants to be in front of Nisse. "No, Johan, wrong," says the teacher and holds her arm like a barrier between the two boys. Johan complains. "No, now Nisse stands in front of Johan," continues the teacher. She sounds friendly but decided. And this stressing situation continues for a while, and a lot of different interactions take place within that situation. So this is a addressing episode that was drawn from Eva Johansson's previous study, which was conducted in a Swedish preschool context. And in the present study, what I'm talking about, this episode was used with the aim to inspire educators to reflect on early childhood practices and values in Nordic preschools. We used a written description of the episode so that in Iceland, Norway, and Finland, the text was translated into the educator's mother tongue, while in Sweden and Denmark, the Swedish text was used. And we asked the educators who participated in our research project to read through this text. And then we organized group discussions for the educators to talk about the episode with their colleagues and with researchers. And in this study we used 10 group discussions, 2 from each Nordic country. So these participants read the same episode before the group discussions. So what did the educators talk about after reading the dressing episode? We found that there were 4 common topics. First, the educators talked about the atmosphere of the situation. Quite many of them said that or felt that it was hectic and chaotic by nature. For instance, a Finnish educator said that in this whole thing there was a sort of chaotic atmosphere. I didn't read all of the excerpt because I want to save some time. The second topic that was common in the group discussions was the practical organization of the dressing situation. The educators wondered why so big and diverse group was dressing with few adults in such a space, long and narrow locker room. The third common topic was the nature of communication. The educators interpreted that there was a lot of negatively oriented communication, a lot of no, as the Norwegian educator says here in the excerpt. The fourth common topic was the boy called Johan. The educators interpreted that he was a child with some special needs, and they said that there was a lot of this negative communication directed towards Johan. But the educators didn't only talk about the text, but the text somehow resonated with their own experiences about the ECEC work. They found something familiar in this situation, and they told that they can see themselves in such a situation. They had experiences being in similar situations. On the other hand, some of them felt something strange in the dressing situation. For instance, Finnish educators raised the staff structure that differed from their own. Like this Finnish educator says, "It straight away catches my eye that when I read a few lines, that here's one qualified kindergarten teacher and the rest are assistant. So where's the nurse? And what are these assistants here?" So this dressing episode from a Swedish preschool inspired the educators in all of the participating preschools to reflect on their own practices and their own values. It gave inspiration to reflecting. What about the values? There were some values that were explicitly mentioned, such as discipline, courtesy, and caring. But more often the educators used indirect means to express their value judgments. For instance, they referred to a bad situation or poor pedagogy to express what they thought about the dressing episode. So we found that values were very much intertwined into the educators' pedagogical talk. They were not a distinct area in their discussion, but very much embedded into their talk about pedagogy. However, a variety of value-related themes were identified from the material, the group interviews. And here you can see some examples. Rather than addressing directly caring values, the educators talked about fulfilling children's needs, empathy towards children's emotions, physical closeness, eye contact. And these issues have been regarded as typical for caring values or characteristics for caring ethics. They talked about avoiding chaos. They viewed harmony as an ideal condition for young children's daily life. They talked about correcting, controlling, and intervening in children's activities, which have some kind of connection to disciplinary values. The educators talked about children's ages, which they connected with their developmental needs. They talked about how dressing situation could be also a learning situation for children, and how children could learn from each other. And even though democracy was rarely mentioned, the educators talked about children's opportunities to participate. They discussed whether the children were treated fairly or unfairly in that dressing situation, and they called for similar opportunities for all children. So the values were there even though they were not directly mentioned or conceptualized. Then a few words about similarities and differences in interpretations. The 4 topics that I raised, they penetrated the research material. They existed, they were to be found from all of the group discussions. The educators also criticized very similar issues in different Nordic countries. For instance, this chaotic atmosphere, ignoring the youngest children's needs, lack of dialogue, and the negative tone in communication, for example. Furthermore, their suggestions how to better organize a dressing episode were very similar, regardless the context and the country. They suggested working in smaller groups, distributing the tasks among adults, using spaces differently, and so on. So it was interesting to notice that most of the differences occurred between individuals and preschools rather than between the countries. For instance, there was one Norwegian preschool where the educators, quite many agreed that the atmosphere really was chaotic to their mind. But there was one educator who disagreed and said that she doesn't like the word chaos. This is just life going on. So there were different interpretations. So to conclude, this study provides evidence that educators in these 10 preschools shared some pedagogical ideas and values. But on the basis of this study, we cannot argue that this is because of a shared Nordic basis. We had a limited 10 preschools. We cannot overgeneralize these findings. But this gives us a reason to go further and implement further studies. What is this about? Is there really something common values in Nordic ECEC, or is this because there is a more broadly shared view what early childhood education is about? European view, Western view, or something else? If you are interested to know more about the theoretical and methodological basis of the study or the analysis process, you can read, because the study has just recently been published in the International Journal of Early Childhood, there is a special issue consisting of articles that are done on the basis of the Nordic project, and this is one of the articles. So, thank you for your attention.